Welcome to the Shergroup podcast, where we share ideas on how to help businesses grow and prosper in the online world. Join host, Chief Shergroupie, Claire Sambrook, as she discusses her digital journey and how Shergroup is helping thousands to keep their business flowing and growing. Here on the Shergroupie podcast.
Good morning and hello wherever you are in the world, and welcome to this edition of Shergroup on the Sofa. And as I do in my travels, I meet so many interesting people, and today the guy that I am talking to is a bit of a hero of mine. I've told him that, so he doesn't need to be embarrassed. But we actually worked together in the Institute of Credit Management, or the Chartered Institute, as he drove it forward to become chartered by Royal Charter. And he was an inspiration to me in my time with that organisation. So it's a great privilege for me today to introduce Philip King to you. And he's going to talk about his journey in credit, which is fascinating. Before we get into that, we're just going to give a shout out to our number one fan of Shergroup, who is Ross Saunders. So, hey, Rossi, I know you'll be listening to this recording. And Philip would just like to say hello to you, I think.
Hi, Ross. It's great that you're watching us, and Claire just told me all about you. So I wish you very well, and I hope Norwich have a really good season this year. So strength to them and to you.
That's from a Tottenham fan, right? Absolutely,
yeah.
Okay, well, we can't all support Norwich, although I do because that's my hometown. All right. Well, thank you for that. So, Philip King, fantastic name in credit. You know that. It's your passion. I mean, ever since I've known you, geez, I must have known you over 20 years now, and you have been passionate about this topic in all the time that I've known you. So, how did you get into credit, and why have you stayed working in it for so long?
Well, I left school with no qualifications at all. School wasn't a high point of my life. Spent 4 years working as a very lowly civil servant, and then started driving. I was a van driver for a while. I was a minicab driver for a while, and I just asked a mate one day if his company had got any van driving jobs going. And he said, no, but we've got a job in the credit department. You'd love that. And I said, would I? What is it? And he got me an interview. And I went for the interview, and the Glaswegian who interviewed me said, well, I'd love to take you on, but I'd quite like someone with some experience. So, we'll keep your name on file. He rang me up 2 weeks later and said, no one else applied for the job. Are you still willing to give it a go? And I really wanted a job at that point. So I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I can honestly say that from day one, I absolutely loved it. I'd never heard what credit was, knew nothing about it. And yet it just grabbed a hold of me. So I got into it there, spent 10 years there, did my CICM qualification, ICM as it was then, really enjoyed it, worked up through the ranks a bit, got into management in that company, and found a niche that just fitted me. People often say they fell into credit, and I don't accept that at all. I didn't fall into credit. I was lucky to find credit, and it found me, and we've stuck together for the last 44 years. And throughout my career, my passion has remained undimmed. For me, it's a career that involves so many things. A good credit manager, a lawyer, negotiator, target setter, motivator, all of the things that any profession has, but in abundance. And no 2 days are the same. And it's not just processing stuff. It's actually understanding people and working with them and so on. So it's a really, really good career to be in. And I guess I succeeded in it because whilst I was hopeless at school and had no interest at all, once I was in a career and looking to develop, there was a connection and there was a reason to study. So I did the Dun & Bradstreet qualification, then the ICM qualification, and then an accounting qualification, and then an MBA, all of which I saw as being pivotal to what I was doing and having some purpose. So it stood me in good stead and has done me a lot of favours. And I just, commend it to anybody.
I'm intrigued by that because listening to you and being lucky enough to work with you, you would never have known that you didn't like school. I mean, you would have thought you were a A1 student, because you're fully engaged in what you're doing. And I think that's a great anecdote, really, for people that perhaps are coming out of school or college and not really understanding what credit could do for them and how you get the bug, which you obviously did, and then made it into your career. So for those of you that are listening, that maybe school is not, the be all and end all. I was a bit like Philip as well. I was a bit of a rebel at school. Don't mind saying that. So, I mean, you just have to find your niche. And if you're thinking about credit, you can see that Philip's a great aspirational leader to follow. So don't worry about not being great at school. You've just got to get into your niche. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Philip? So just enjoy, being in credit. And if you're what do you say to people that are sort of coming into credit now? I mean, for you found your niche. What do you say to people who are sort of in the credit departments, accounts receivables, and they haven't, got that kind of promotion yet? What do they need to be doing to make a difference?
I think they need to listen and to learn from those around them. I think they need to understand what credit's about, and whether it's business or consumer or whatever, we're all touched by credit. Most of us have a mortgage or a credit card or something, and credit people are dealing with those things on a day-to-day basis, and they're making the world go round, and they're making money go round, and they're helping people who are in difficulty to get out of difficulty and so on. So it's not just about, a business process. It's much more than that. And I talk to people who work in call centres, who are talking to people who have got real severe financial problems, and they desperately want to get back on their feet. And if you can help them do that, and I can think of countless businesses where the businesses were in danger of going bust, and we found a way of supporting them and helping them survive. And I've got letters that I received from a company in Dublin who said in the letter, if you hadn't supported us and worked with us, we'd have gone bust and the company would have folded years ago. Yeah. And we spent so much time just trying to work with them and find solutions to help them do it. And credit, people talk about credit being a barrier to sales. It's not. It's a sales tool. If you give credit, you can achieve more sales. So it's building the business. It's at the heart of the business, but it helps it grow. It helps it avoid risk. It does all of these things. So if you're new into it, just watch what's going on around you and understand the context in which you're working, because it's really powerful.
Yeah, no, I see that, and great that you've got letters from businesses and people that have said thanks for the support. That's a really nice kind of, closing the circle, isn't it, on what credit can be and what difference it can make. So anyway, you worked hard, you got your qualifications, and then you became the Director General. And I know you're a very humble guy. This is a big title. I know how humble you are. But you became the Director General of the ICM in 2005. So how did that come about?
Well, I'd been working in credit for 20 odd years, 3 or 4 companies, and I was involved with the ICM. So I did some teaching for them. I was chair of their education committee for a long time, got involved in its council and governance and so on. And I used to spend a lot of time chatting to the guy that then headed the education team. And we'd sit in hotels before conferences the night before, sort of, chewing the cud as you do. And I remember saying to him, Peter Rowe was the Director General at that time. Yeah. I'd love to do Peter's job. I think it's such an opportunity. And then at some point in early 2005, Peter said he was going to retire. And I just thought, well, I've got to throw my hat in the ring. because it's something I've just thought I could do and could add something to. And I did. I went through a 9-month recruitment process, which was incredibly grueling because I was an insider and therefore had to be more challenged than someone from outside. But eventually I got appointed. And for me, it was just an opportunity to do something for an organisation I loved, for a profession that I loved, and just see if I could find a way of helping that. I never thought I'd spend 14 years there, but I did, and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yes, I remember a bit of the grilling, making sure that, this insider was going to be the right guy. I remember a little bit of that discussion around that. But as you say, you made it your own and built a lot of kind of stature within the institute, but also within the credit industry, and really put the CICM on the map. I think that speaking as somebody that was there before and after you became Director General, I think you really put the CICM on the map. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced as Director General?
Well, I guess the biggest one was the fact that I'd never been a Director General or Chief Exec. I'd been a relatively senior credit manager in a couple of businesses, including the most recent one at the time being Vodafone. But I'd never run a business as such. The CISM is a small business in its own way. So I had a lot of learning to do. I needed a lot of help. But in terms of the organisation, I think, it has a very broad church of membership. So there are people in consumer credit, people in B2B credit, there are people in credit reference agencies, credit insurers, all of whom have their own set of needs and aspirations, and all of whom expect their institute to deliver it. And that's a challenge because you're not going to one particular school of people. The other thing for me was getting the organisation recognised and more widely recognised than I believed it had been. So engaging with government was really important. Getting ourselves on the map as far as government was concerned and being recognised, because I thought what we were doing was really relevant to government. Cash flow is really relevant to small businesses and to businesses in general. So it was important for me that we got ourselves around the table with government, more broadly government than just some narrow areas in which we'd previously been involved. Education has always been a massive part of what the ICM delivered, making sure that was fit for purpose and was meeting the needs of the wider community, and building partnerships, because organisations like institutes and trade bodies and professional bodies thrive on partnerships. So building partnerships with other organisations you were involved in the High Court Enforcement Officers Association, a partnership that's still really strong today and doing more and more. Working with the likes of Shergroup, going to Braintree when you were there and talking to people and doing stuff. Finding ways to grow the organisation and build its network through other organisations that could help do that was really important, and getting a sort of commercial footing, so building a partnership base of businesses that would help financially, but also help in more social ways as well to drive the institute forward. Yes,
I think that was a big sea change for the institute in terms of coming out of its centre and going going across the commerce, the commercial field, and looking at where different types of credit were. And you were a great ambassador for that. I know you had great people on your team like Debbie Tuckwood and others who all helped you achieve those goals that you set out. And I think actually probably not being a CEO or not leading something before probably helped you, because you probably came at it with a fresh, or you definitely came with a passion, but you also came with a fresh pair of eyes in terms of, well, if this was me, this is what I want from the institute. I always felt that about you. You were always thinking about the members as opposed to the sort of machinery, the executive council and the advisory council. You were thinking about what the members, what value they would get. I think that has really come across in your legacy, which you should be very proud of. So what achievements are you most proud of, do you think?
Well, you've mentioned Debbie Tuckwood, so I'll mention Debbie by name because she was an incredibly loyal. She's still there, but she was an incredibly loyal part of the team, and did massive amounts in the world of education, which frankly, I hardly understood, let alone be able to deliver. She did an amazing job, and there were other members of the team as well who contributed over the years in different ways to different things. But I guess I was thinking about this, and the things I'm most proud of, I think, are the government engagement piece. The credit crunch came in 2008, and we'd been working hard to bang on government's door at the department for originally trade and industry, and then Burr, and then whatever it became next, now DBT. And we'd made some inroads, but the credit crunch came, and having a table around Lord Mandelson's table of advisors and consultants and big companies and people like the CBI and the BCC and the Chambers of Commerce and the Federation of Small Business, those sorts of organisations. We became one of those key players in that time. And I remember many morning round tables with Peter Mandelson and all these people looking at what could be done to help the economy through the crunch. And I remember Peter Mandelson asking me to write a series of 10 managing cash flow guides, which we wrote, put on the ICM website and put on government websites. And the last time I looked, they'd had well over 600,000 downloads, which is phenomenal for an organisation the size of the ICM. And then being asked by Peter Mandelson to launch and host the prompt payment code for 12 years was great. And I think through that period, we really got into round the table with government in a strong way. I was proud of the way we revised the governance because, as you know, years ago, we had a council of 40 and it was all a bit structurally difficult to manage. We made the advisory council, the executive board, and all of those things, and got the structure, I think, into a more manageable and slick format. I was pleased with the stuff we did with the ITN, the video stuff we produced, a couple of those, which came about over a chance meeting at a conference with one of their producers. We were able to turn into a really good piece of PR and so on. The Quality and Credit Management Programme, what is now CICMQ, was dreamt up. I had an idea, shared it with someone over a sort of napkin at a dinner, and we ended up devising this scheme, piloting it, and it's now rolled out and is working really well. A way of trying to recognise excellence in credit management and really best practice. But I have to say that for me, the biggest achievement was the Royal Charter, because I'd been around in 1990 something when we'd been told by the Privy Council not even to think about it. When I got in post, I went and saw them in 2006 and then in 2009, and both times was told we hadn't got a hope, so don't even think about it. After the meeting in 2009, I started working out how we could do things to get ourselves in a better position. Went back in May 2013, and they said, yeah, you can submit an informal letter and see where it goes. And we did, and worked through an incredible, I could go on for hours about this, but an incredibly complex process to get to a different structure, reorganising the entire organisation and so on. But eventually we got authorisation to proceed, an agreement from the Privy Council to proceed, and then we're into all the formal stuff. And we always had the plan of going live on the 1st of January 2015, because that made it easier with restructuring the finances and back year end and all of those sorts of things. We submitted our draft petition May 14, and then we got completely sidetracked by the Scottish independence referendum, because that was in September 14, and the warning was that if that got the go-ahead, the Privy Council and the Attorney General would be completely swamped by that for 2 years. So we'd have to forget it. So we were on real tenterhooks until the 18th of September when that vote took place. But even then, we didn't get to the Privy Council till November, when we'd expected to get in September. And we finally got all the documentation in place and everything else done, literally just before Christmas in 2014, and managed to go live on the 1st of January 2015. But it was was pretty hairy stuff, I have to say. There were lots of times when we thought this ain't going to happen, and it was, it was a lot of work for a lot of people. The team at headquarters did an amazing amount of work. Just constantly stuff. So for me, that was that transformed us. For me, when you talk to a government official and you're a chartered body, they see you entirely differently from how they see you when you're not. Literally palpable. A conversation before Christmas and after Christmas was in a completely different place. I can't explain why that is. It doesn't make any sense really, but that's the way it is. And having the charter really put us in a different place.
In terms of this piece that we're doing, we're going to send it out on the wavelengths. For people outside the UK, can you just give me a soundbite around what chartered status is and what it means for an organisation?
Well, it's a really difficult thing to explain, but a royal charter means that you are governed by the Queen or King. Right now,
yes.
I'm falling back into the habits when I was involved in it before. You're now governed by the King, basically. So he has given a royal charter under which you are now governed. So you're not under the Companies Act. You're not under the Charities Act. You're a standalone organisation. You are required to do all sorts of things by the Attorney General's office that oversees what you do.
Yes.
But what it means is that you are recognised as being of public benefit. That's probably the simple term thing. And the King, through his advisors and his Privy Council and Attorney General, have recognised that the organisation is in the public interest and has a role to play. To support the public, and therefore you're not just a sort of club or a membership body or a trade body. You're actually an organisation that is established and set up to work for the benefit of the general public. It's a, I can't remember now how many there are, but it isn't that many compared to the number of businesses in the UK. So you're part of a more select group, and you are. If you do stuff wrong, you are answerable to the King and his office for what you've done. So it puts you under responsibility, but it also gives you the status, which is really important.
And tremendous kudos for the organisation in achieving that, and also on the world stage. As you know, I'm based largely out of the UK now, offshore, and honestly, I'm so proud of the CICM and its development, not only as a UK organisation, but as a world leader in the conversation on credit. Obviously, there are other associations out there, and we know those. But I just think what you've done in the UK and how you helped position the CICM makes it a world leader in this very important subject. So, terrific for you, and well done to everybody involved in achieving that. And in relation to the education piece, I just want to say thank you again for supporting the High Court Enforcement Officers Association in their development, because we are for the public benefit as authorised officers, and I think the fact that the CICM were prepared to see us as and always have done actually, a subset of credit, has been fantastic for what we've achieved and very helpful to government.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
very helpful to government. So anyway, you left the CICM. When did you actually leave them? What year was that?
That was January 2020.
Okay, and then you went on to become, having engaged with government a lot, you went on to become the UK's Small Business Commissioner. And I guess that's, now I've listened to what you've said, I might have thought it was a strange career move, but actually to me it seems kind of in tune with what you had created and the conversations with government you were having. Is that right? Have I got that right in terms of how it kind of fitted together or not?
I guess so. I've been working closely with government over a long period of time and gone through a succession of ministers because they come and go pretty regularly, as you know. But I got on with Kelly Tolhurst was a small business minister for a while, and I got on really well with her, and we had a really good relationship to the extent that she would phone me up and ask questions, and I could ring her up, which is unusual with ministers. Normally, you've got to go through the protocols. And she rang me up one day. And said the existing small business commissioner had moved on in something of a hurry. But let's not dwell on that. But we've got a gap. She said, would you be willing to step in and fill it for 6 months while we recruit a replacement? And I'd been thinking about, it was time for me to move on from the CICM and semi-retire, to be honest. That'd been my plan sometime in 2020. So I sort of talked to the board at the ICM and said, how do you feel about that? Fortunately, we'd got someone that was able to step in the interim in the CICM. So because I needed to move quite quickly, it's one of those things where we need you in a fortnight, not 6 months. So I agreed to do it for 6 months, and that would lead me into retirement quite nicely. 6 months became 17 months because of COVID, and they couldn't recruit and so on. And Kelly Tolhurst moved on about a week after I took post, which was really disappointing because I'd enjoyed working with her.
Right.
But it was just one of those sort of fortuitous things that she and I'd worked together. She obviously, felt comfortable with the way I did things, thought I could support small businesses because of what I'd said, and therefore it just fitted. And it all sort of worked quite smoothly. So I started in middle of January 2020, and then we shut down in March 2020. So, it was an interesting period of time.
Yes. That's a very interesting period of time because how many small businesses were impacted by lockdown? A lot.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was a challenging time as well for your office. What do you take away from that opportunity? What a great opportunity that is. What do you take away from that as the positives of being the Small Business Commission?
Well, it was interesting because the previous incumbent had spent a lot of time going out to conferences, talking to people, meeting with organisations, and I assumed I'd carry on doing the same thing. And then, 6 weeks in, it was, go home and stay there. And the team was doing the same thing. And it was, now what do I do? So we sort of pivoted to sort of an online presence. I did 120 webinars in just over 12 months for a huge number of organisations and so on, working with other organisations to deliver stuff. And that was not what I'd expected to be doing. It wasn't what anyone had expected me to be doing. But it was really good because, I probably talked to far more people than I would have done had I been going out to conferences and so on. And one of the things that stands out for me was that, I'd have a webinar on some stuff, and we talk about the strategic government thing, but I'd often talk about practical tips on credit management and cash flow management and so on. And often I'd be contacted through LinkedIn or something straight after the webinar with, this is my problem, what should I do? And I'd sort of go back and say, well, try this or try that. And there's one particular girl that was running a series of gym classes for schools in the Northwest. And she came back to me and asked me some advice, and I gave it to her. And still to this day, she and I are in communication regularly by email. And she just emails me and says, this parent says that. How should I respond? This parent won't do that, or the school won't do that. What should I do? And it's, we just have a chat, and I sort of share my sort of pennies worth of what might be useful. But there are lots of people like that where there was one where I had a call straight after a webinar, and someone said, we're owed this amount of money, I can't get it, I don't know what to do. And I said, let me get the team involved. And they got involved, and she got paid on the following Monday, having been waiting for months for some money. And she said to me afterwards, she said, I really couldn't have gone grocery shopping that weekend if that money hadn't arrived. This wasn't, the company money. This was the family money. And you put cornflakes on my table that weekend, which is, incredibly humbling, and you realise that the team's having that sort of impact and can have that sort of impact.
Yeah.
And I talked to loads of big business chief execs and finance directors, where we were trying to encourage them to support small businesses, and there were many where we persuaded them to go away and look at their debtor book and say, well, okay, let's pay all these really small ones quickly, help them keep going, and then we'll worry about the bigger ones separately. And getting them to realise that we were talking about, a family's groceries, not a row on a spreadsheet, was really interesting, because many of these guys don't see it that way. It's just numbers and it's processes and stuff. But actually, it was really important. And I had some fantastic conversations, and really big high street names who took an approach that said, you know what, we could help some of these people. Why don't we do it? How can we do it? And I think, for me, when we collected 2.1 million quid for small businesses during my 18 months, and that's great. But just helping small businesses, encouraging big businesses to do different things and be better behaved towards their small suppliers was, for me, really gratifying. And working with a great little team who really were passionate about the companies they were supporting was great. And again, it was new territory for me, but it was really enjoyable.
That's a good positive story to come out of what was a rotten time for all of us. I'm glad that you were able to support any number of businesses, whether it was 2 or whether it was 100. I really don't know, but it was great to hear that you were able to support them in the way that you did. And I'm not surprised that you're still in touch with people that were emailing you and letting you know about their grocery shopping. That is something that you wouldn't turn away, I know. But just on that, so it's clear from what we've been talking about that I'm going to ask you about what you do now. But before we get to that, you clearly have a passion for supporting. Well, you support anybody that's trying to move the business forward. I've seen that over the years. But small businesses, I mean, this is where you got involved. What would be one piece of advice that you would give someone starting up their own business today? What would you say to them?
It's a really simple one. Keep your eyes on the cash.
Yeah.
Cash flow is king.
Yeah.
When businesses run out of cash, they fail. Whether it's Wilco or going back years, Woolworths, or or Debenhams or whoever it is. When the cash runs out, they can't pay the rent, they can't pay the wages, they can't pay a key supplier. I mean, it was really interesting. The Wilco story, one of the most recent ones. Over a period of time, you saw the shelves gradually emptying as they lost credit insurance. People wouldn't supply them, and they just couldn't fill the shelves. You're going to buy something, and there'd be a huge gap where what you thought was going to be there wasn't. And they were running out of cash. And when you run out of cash, you fail. So however big the business, if you don't keep an eye on cash, then you're in danger of failure. So for me, for a smallest business right through the large businesses, just never take your eyes off the cash. Just focus on it and make sure you've got enough cash to keep the next week going.
Yeah. No, that's very, very sound advice. And I know I always thought it was a bit ironic when you said like cash flow is king, and that's your surname, last name. I always thought that was a great tagline for you. So when you finished your time as a small business commissioner, you also gave up full-time employment. So what are you doing with your time now? I bet you're
throughout my career, I never thought I'd retire because I just enjoyed working so much. But then you start to get older and you start to realise you've got 6 grandsons and you want to spend some time with them and stuff, and there's things you want to do. So I sort of made a decision to become semi-retired, and I did that for 2 reasons. One, because I'm quite hyperactive, so if I've got nothing to do, I'd be quite bored quite quickly. But also because, I didn't want to just sort of stop and stagnate. So it's important for me to have something to keep the mind working and so on. So I work with a number of organisations. And they're all organisations that I believe in, which is important, but also they're organisations that support either cash flow stroke credit management or support small businesses in their growth. And if I can contribute to what they're doing, then that continues, if you like, my passion of the last 40 odd years. Some of them are in, invoice finance, some of them are in sort of information, some of them are in debt collection and so on, but they're all in one way or another, they're helping small businesses to survive and flourish. And I created something out of all the webinars I've done over the years called my 5-step model, which is a sort of 5 questions which help small businesses to get paid. And I deliver that. And I've been increasingly delivering that. And I built my own website and stuff, which is philipking.net, in case anyone wants to know. But my 5-step model, we've just launched a publication with the Business Tourist Association, Business Travel Association. Sorry, I just created that. Which is, very tailored and bespoke for that sector. But it's all around, the 5-step model is all about practical tips to help get paid right from the beginning, when you first meet the customer before you've done any business, through to when you have to sue them and use an enforcement agent or whatever it is you have to do. And then for me, there are 5 steps in that process. And if, people always say, well, how do I get paid for the invoices outstanding? Well, you get paid for the invoices outstanding by knowing who the customer is before you start, and all those practical little details. And when I deliver the 5-step model, whether it's on a webinar or in writing or whatever, the thing people always say to me is, there was something in there I'd never thought of. I've done a lot of this stuff, but some of it and if one little bit sticks and changes the way they operate, then that helps them to, keep their eye on the cash. And that's really important. So I'm doing a sort of variety of things and enjoying myself in the process.
I'm glad that you're developing your content. I think that's very cool. Because you've got all that experience and it's not just academic experience. It's a real life experience of credit and helping customers and companies to get the right outcomes. So I think it's very cool that you've got your own website now. I'm really pleased to hear that, and that you're distilling all this content on there. Good for you.
I'm really chuffed that I built it myself, and I never thought I'd be able to build it. I mean, with the help of GoDaddy or whatever it is, but I never thought I'd be able to build a website. But I did.
That is an achievement in itself. So well done you. Well done.
No one goes there, but I built it and I can see it. So.
Yeah, well, it's there now. A few more people know about it, and I know about it, so that's good. So a long career, some real highs in it. How would you summarise then, looking back on all of that, reflecting back on that, the role of the credit professional? What's the top tip for anyone starting out in their career? That boy or girl at school that's going to school, how to get to work, get some money. What's your top tip for those guys?
Well, I think to answer the first question, I think that a good credit professional is just, as I said earlier, a multiplicity of things. But credit isn't just about mitigating risk. It's about finding opportunities to sell. It's about helping the business grow. It's about looking for sales opportunities. It's working with the company in order to help it flourish. And when we talk, we all heard the thing when, credit people are called sales prevention officers and stuff. And that for me is a real insult, because I spent, a lot of my career finding ways to do business that really we shouldn't have done, but, the business needed them. And my job was to find a way of making that sale happen so we could continue to thrive. So I think it's recognizing that credit is not about risk analysis and risk mitigation. That's one of the strands of it, but it's by no means the only and not always the most important. And for a tip for someone starting out, I think, if I may, I'll have 2. One is always listen and learn. So listen to those around you. Learn what's wrong and learn what's right and use what's right. But listen to people around you and learn from what they do, because credit people, it's a really good community. And people are really willing to share their expertise and their knowledge. And if you listen to that, you've got so much to learn. And the second tip is never underestimate your contribution. I talked to so many credit people over the years who see themselves as a sort of back office administrative function, and they're doing a good job, but they don't see any more than that. But it is so much more, and people need to recognise the contribution they're making. If they don't recognise it and shout about it, no one else will. And as a profession, we need people to be saying what they do. And there are some really good, people out there who are doing a fantastic job and aren't afraid to say so. And I applaud that. And more of us need to do that.
Yes, and join the CICM and
absolutely
get qualifications and build the education pathway. I think that you taught me about education and using your qualifications to get a run on the ladder and build yourself up, which is, maybe you didn't do it at school, but you can do it in your job.
Absolutely.
That's another way to go. Well, Philip, it's been a fascinating journey through your 44 years and counting career in credit. Doesn't sound like you're going away anytime soon. I see we'll put all your social links in our show notes. But the goodbusinesspays.com, what is that? That looks like, is that your website or is that something?
No, I'm just on their board. I'm a board member. It's run by a guy called Terry Corby. Good Business Pays is taking the data that large businesses have to report to a government portal about how they pay and so on, and it's producing league tables out of that, the best, the worst, and so on, and it's riding a campaign to get big businesses to behave better in the way they pay small suppliers. It's just published its fastest list for this year. It did its worst list a few months ago. But it's really a campaign just to get businesses to behave better. So we're using that. I'm using that as a vehicle to push my 5-step model out because, that helps small businesses get paid better. And we're using it as a way of talking to big businesses about, just behaving as they should and treating their suppliers responsibly and as partners. Because trading should be a partnership, not a arm's length, them and us. And we need more people to do that. So Good Business Pays is a community interest company. It's not a profit-making organisation. We just go out and we campaign. And Terry Corby works tirelessly to try and drive that. I sit in the background, helping him a bit, writing some stuff, and just encouraging him, supporting him where I can. But it's a good movement, and it's making a lot of impact as well. So it's good.
Well, I just remembered before we close off, we talked about you coming out to Orlando next year to do the World Credit Congress, and unfortunately, family commitments prevent you from doing that. But as a movement, I think the Congress has a lot of value, and I know you do too. In terms of joining up the credit conversation across the world, where do you think something like the World Credit Congress adds value to the conversations on credit?
Well, I was involved in the first one in Mexico, whenever that was, I don't know, 2004 or something. And I've done several since. I didn't do the Australia one, and I missed another one, but I did Dublin last October, and I'm gutted I can't do Orlando next year with you guys. But it's a really good networking opportunity for businesses to meet each other from around the globe. And there's nothing new out there, is there? Everything's been tried, so we need to learn from each other and put it into a different context. And some of the best practice stuff that will be shared, as it has in previous World Credit Congresses, is really worthwhile listening to. And I know that I was chatting to Declan Flood from Ireland recently, and they're trying to get some people from Ireland to go across for it. And I would encourage anyone that can to get there because, credit is a real communication operation. It's about talking to customers. It's about talking to suppliers and so on. And if you talk and network to your peers, you learn so much. And I've been involved in, various international organizations through my time at CICM where we gained a huge amount and could come back and share stuff that was useful. So any forum is great. This one's particularly good because it brings all the continents together, and Louis has done an incredible job in keeping it going and getting Europe and Australia and so on all together around the table. And I think it's a really, really worthwhile thing. And if I only could, I'd be there and enjoy it. But I'm certainly going to get involved and watch some of it online because I think it's
that's what we're
really worthwhile.
Capability, so we'll get you involved that way for sure. All right, well, Philip, thank you so much again for your time today and your contribution, and thank you for everything that you've done for so many of us in credit. We sincerely appreciate you, and we as Shergroup will definitely support and promote any content that you want to share with us, because that is pure wisdom coming out there. So we want to know more about that and support your book and. As I say, any content that you want to share with us, we will get it out on our channels. So thank you so much. So bye for now, Philip. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And it's been a privilege to share you with you often. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Shergroupie podcast. To join our Shergroupie community, subscribe by going to our website at www.shergroup.com. Keep up with the latest Shergroup news across all our main channels, including YouTube, LinkedIn, and across all social media. Stay connected and begin building more business relationships.